he says that when he starts to wash him, the first thing that he will do is to cover his nakedness. And it may make sense that I tell you about who should wash him first. I know that Imam Ibn Qudama will address this. He addresses it here. The second paragraph, third paragraph here, the first bulleted paragraph, the one most entitled to washing him, praying on him, and buying him and burying him, is the one appointed by him to do so in his legacy. That is called wasiyu. Then the father and the grandfather, then the closest of the kin from the paternal side, and so on. And for a woman, the most entitled to washing the woman is the mother, then the grandmother, and then the closest of the kin of the related women, except that the emir, leader, is given precedence in prayer over the father and those after him. Prayer, not washing. Okay, so in this case, let's just go back because it does make sense, because I will be saying a lot of things that you should know who's washing first. When someone dies and you have already done the steps that we talked about, you cover the eyes and you tied the jaw so that the mouth does not stay open. We did talk also about, extending and flexing his joints so that they stay somewhat flexible, so that they don't become very stiff. And it would be then important that you look for someone to wash that person, and you should hasten to wash the person. You should hasten to wash. You should hasten in general to wash shroud, pray, and bury. These are the four obligations on the Muslim community towards anyone who dies of the Muslim community. So, what are the four obligations? To wash, to shroud, to bury, to wash, to shroud, to pray, to bury. Wash, shroud, pray, bury. Al-ghasl, al-takfeen, al-salah, al-dafn. Al-ghasl, al-takfeen, al-salah, al-dafn. Washing, shrouding, praying, and burying are four obligatory things on the Muslim community towards the Muslims who die amongst them, towards the Muslims who die in the community. This is an obligation on us. So we can't not do this. We have to do this. It's a communal obligation. If none of us does it, we will be all sinners. Okay? So you should be hastening to doing all of this. When should you not hasten? When should you not hasten to wash the dead? If the death is questionable. If the death is questionable, you should not hasten. You should wait around to make certain that the person died until the smell of the body changes. In the past, they said this because they did not have the techniques and tools to ensure the death. Now we do. So now it is not necessary to wait around for this long until the smell of the body changes. Why did they do this in the past? Because we know that people can go into coma and then they can come back, right? So people did in the past. And when you go into coma and people think that you died and they hasten to bury you, you can imagine how awful that could be, to be buried alive. And then when you wake up, where do you find, how you're shrouded and you're, so that you will suffocate until you die, until you actually die. So that was a huge thing. It was enormous, and it would be an enormous act of negligence for us Muslims to do this to anyone, particularly nowadays. So our scholars in the past said that you should wait around until you ensure the death did actually happen, and if it was questionable, you should even wait until the smell of the body starts to change. And that is a sure sign that the person had died. That's a sure sign. Now they had various signs on the death of the person. Some of them were exact and very accurate, some of them were less accurate, but then they just did have various signs on the death of the person. Nowadays, the persons who should be entrusted with this function are the doctors, and if we have doctors, then there shouldn't be anyone giving their opinion about this. It's just like going to ask a fatwa from a chemist, for instance, or ask a chemist for a fatwa, or to ask like a physician for a fatwa. The same would be here, the same mistake, or the same mistake, I think, if you ask someone that is not specialized in medicine to diagnose the death of someone. So you have to ask the doctors. Once the doctors tell you that for sure he died, then you can proceed. And then if he did not die, you did absolve yourself of guilt, right? Because you did ask the expert, and the expert did tell you he died. That is the same thing like when you're unaware of the direction of the Qibla. You ask an expert, and if the expert tells you this is the direction, and the direction turns out to be this way, but you prayed this way, you do not need to repeat the prayer. But if you ask someone who's not an expert, and he told you it's this way, turns out to be this way, you need to repeat the prayer. Because you were negligent in seeking the opinion of the expert. And the same applies here when it comes to death. You have to ask the expert. And I'm stressing this because sometimes people hasten to bury, maybe this will not apply very much in America because you have to take permission, I guess. And in many countries now you have to take permission, and permission has to be given by a doctor. But in some of not necessarily our countries, as Muslim countries, but in some of the less fortunate countries, the poorer countries, that permission may not be that required, and they may not have the means to do this. Therefore, people should wait until they completely ensure the occurrence of death. One of the issues that could be interesting here is, and I will mention this, and maybe it's a little bit too much of branching off or offshooting here from the main topic, but this is important, and this is happening quite frequently here and in the US and in many other Western countries. The issue of brain death, is a big issue, and that issue caused a lot of confusion to many scholars. Is brain death equivalent to death, or is brain death different from death? Now you have to differentiate between brain death and persistent vegetative state. You have to understand that the brain consists of many parts. When lay people talk about brain death, they may not necessarily be meaning the actual brain death. So now, Dr. Mustafa is a neurologist, so I have the expert here in the audience. So the actual brain death is, the brain death that we're talking about is the complete brain death of the entire brain, or the death of the brain stem. Because the brain stem is in control of the vital functions of the body. The brain stem is in control, which is the part that is lower down in the brain. Have you seen a picture of a brain? There is a part that's lower down in the brain, before the spinal cord. Okay, so that part is called the brain stem. And when that part dies, your heart cannot beat, because the heart beats, the cardiopulmonary system is dependent on the brain stem. But if